Hey, we are live. Thank you guys for listening. My name is Mark Monroe. I'm hosting today on Real Estate Power Play. So if you're listening to us on one of your favorite podcasts, please like us. If you're listening to us on YouTube, please share it. Or if you're listening to us on one of the social media sites, please share. And if you have any questions, as we're live right now, go ahead and plug them in the comments. Otherwise, if you're listening to this pre-recording, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. So the rest of the boys are not here today. They're up in Cleveland, Ohio, at a commercial academy training convention up there. So we actually have Christian on. Christian, how you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah,
How
excited
are
to have
you?
you on here. So yeah, appreciate you coming on. And I know Christian through we're in a mastermind group together called what is it called now? The Core, I think.
The core, yep. Uh,
Yep.
see Ryan Dumas and Danny Galvin and those guys.
Yep. It's a great job. It's a great mastermind, especially if you're in the multifamily commercial world. Highly recommend looking into that if you guys want to be a part of that mastermind. If you are, reach out to myself or reach out to Christian or reach out to Ryan Dumas as well, or any of those guys, and we'll be more than happy to kind of get you over there. So, Christian, why don't you, kind of go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're currently at, and where you're located.
Yeah, so I'm a commercial real estate investor. I'm based out of the Dallas Fort Worth area. My primary focus is self storage and multifamily. Um, the self storage is on the private portfolio side, and I'm with a small firm here in DFW, focusing on multifamily. So been in haven't been in real estate all my career. Let's see, I got my undergrad in 2011, MBA in 2016, and then from that point on, worked in a kind of a corporate environment in logistics. And then right before COVID happened, I got let go from my W-2. Um, that year in 2019, that's when I really started getting into real estate, learning about it, whatnot. And uh, summer of 2019, I was flipping houses. I got into Airbnb arbitrage and just spent about a year and a half in that space and did about 8 or 9 flips within that next following year into 2020. Um, and then really started transitioning over to commercial real estate, um, and really started to grow in that space. So, yeah, it's kind of a gist.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. How, like, when you're doing, because I hear a lot of people have this issue. They're in the residential world and they try to, transition over to the commercial world. You know, how did you do that? And I'm assuming, did you have like were you doing a 9 to 5 job while you're doing that transition to try to, because it's hard because you have to, you don't see returns on the commercial immediately, versus the residential. So how did that transaction work for you?
Yeah, so
Transition.
I think one thing that stops people from moving from residential to commercial is this maybe this false perception of complexities in commercial, and then you start adding commas into things, and people tend to shy away. But in reality, in my opinion, it's just as much work to do a mid-sized to large commercial deal as it is to do smaller residential deals. Um, I mean, and there's pros and cons to both. I mean, but as far as the way I see it, economies of scale uh, is going to be achieved much quicker in the commercial space. Even though you have your residential, and you may need to sell off a couple houses here and there, and that may be good for some quick liquidity. But as far as scale goes, my opinion is commercial is probably going to be uh, better. But as far as the transition piece, I was working a W-2, and so let me see, 2019. Uh, trying to remember the timeline. So there was a point where I was working for as a dock supervisor for a logistics company, and it was long hours, 60, 70 hours a week. And although they paid decent, well, if you're breaking it down per the hour, it's about the same as anywhere else. But in my mind, it was decent because of the salary. Um, And at that time, I was also getting my MBA. I was finishing up my MBA, and I didn't have much time for anything. So on the way to work, I was just consuming about an hour each day of any type of real estate podcast, books that I could. And then I left that job after a year to try to get into a W 2 that where I had to work less, because I knew I was getting into this space of real estate. And so on my lunch breaks, I was going to check on flips and stuff. And then after work, I'd immediately go to the flips and check them out. Um, and then so, and then once I got to my final W two, so I was about working for about a year in the last three jobs from 2018 to 2020 before the last one where they let me go. And I was wanting to transition uh, full time into real estate. I was just kind of nervous because you get caught up with that. Well, I'll say kind of false sense of security that you can't get fired, or you can't, they're not going to let you go from a W two. Um, and so, but it happened, and it was kind of like the kick that I needed to. And I had just closed two flips that same week that I got let go. So I essentially made my whole salary in a couple months from those two flips that I did on the side, um, working that whole year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, do you feel like, when one door, and absolutely, you shouldn't even feel it actually happened to you. When one door closes, then you just another door opens, you just kind of take
Yeah.
advantage of it. So instead of stepping backwards, you kind of step forward. So it kind of is a blessing in disguise for you.
Oh, a major blessing. I mean, I'm so grateful. And it's kind of funny because uh, I've never been like let go like that, so it was kind of a shock. And I remember sitting in the parking lot, like in my car, thinking like my first thought was I'm gonna come back and buy their business. And it was just, after, I don't
I
want to
love
be
it.
in logistics, but it was it was kind of that it was needed pretty much, and I knew this was the path I needed to go down anyway. So
It's awesome. Congratulations. So what was your first commercial deal that you actually did, and like how, walk me through that process and what kind of deal it was and how did you find it?
yeah, so well, initially before getting into storage, I had wanted to tackle the multifamily space, and I was learning about it. I read, I think Brian Murray's book on commercial real estate and apartments. Um, and so I was trying to consume some knowledge on in the industry, but one of the things I ran into was kind of the roadblock of at the time I wasn't trying to syndicate or be a part of a syndication team. So most most of the time um, there's a bit of a barrier of entry in that space, and so at the time I didn't have any high net worth or track record or anything like that. So I ended up stumbling across self storage, and um, I joined a group at the time that was called like Storage Rebellion, and they're a great group of guys, and they focus on smaller storage assets. And then so I spent a good 6 or 7 months learning about that asset class. I had a first small deal under contract in summer of 2020. I ended up walking away because once I got the financials and all that stuff, it didn't match, what they initially marketed and stuff. So, but I went through the process. I got the attorney. I did all that stuff. So I mean, I lost some money, but I learned the process of going through the deal, and then um, decided to keep trying to tackle it, and sent out some direct mail campaigns, and I got one back that had a pretty decent response rate. Um, and from that one campaign, I got a portfolio of storage from that, and my first two deals. So the first two deals um, were here in about an hour east of DFW, about 40,000 square feet of storage. Um, and this particular seller, was an older seller. He owned multifamily, but this was his only self storage asset. And so he pretty much hired someone off the street to kind of run the day to day. They didn't know anything about storage, and because of that, they never broke 80% occupancy, physical occupancy. And then I had consumed all the knowledge in the 6 7 month period, um, and pretty much, uh, we started talking numbers, and I let him give me the number first, and it was lower than my number that I was going to offer him. So I said, I have no problem with that. And then from the beginning, we talked about doing the seller financing route because he had already depreciated the property. He'd owned it for 15, 20 years. And he didn't want a 1031 exchange anymore. He's already 77. So um, from a tax standpoint, he was going to have to recapture that. And so he was like, well, I can carry the note or 1031. I don't want a 1031. So we'll carry the note. And I was like, all right, cool. So he owed about 150,000 at the time. And I initially thought I was going to have to bring that down. And I didn't know where I was going to get it. In the past, on single family flips, I had utilized the private investor under the second lien, and came in with quote unquote no money out of pocket. Um, and so so I didn't know where I was going to get the 150, and then that's when he was like, "Hey, well, actually, I don't want a down payment. We can just focus on terms." So I want 6% interest rate. This was back when interest rates were in the 4%, and it was 25-year AM. And the initial agreement was that I wasn't going to pay him off for 5 years. And I was like, well, I had to think about that, but I went ahead with it because, I basically did the math on no down payment versus the 2% interest spread. And it made sense to me. And this was my way in. And
It's
so I did
awesome.
it. Yeah, I did it. And then I ended up asking him if we could refinance a year after. And he said, yeah. And so I refinanced that asset once I tripled the NOI. Um,
That's awesome.
so yeah, I mean, and then from there, I just pretty much I got that place up and running. I operated like an actual storage operator. Um, I viewed it as I view storage as a retail business because it's an active business. It's not like a mailbox money or anything like that. And so I got occupancy from 80 to 92% in 4 or 5 months. Now, granted, that was helped by the pandemic. Um, Occupancies have been fueled in the self storage industry by the pandemic, and low cost of capital for housing. So people were moving left and right because storage is heavily based on 45% of customers come from people moving. So um, everyone's occupancy was going up. So took advantage of that, got it up quickly, and yeah, and then I just went ahead and kept following up with some of the other people that responded to my campaign, and then I closed the portfolio from that same direct mail campaign
That's
a year,
awesome.
a year
Congratulations.
later. Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So were you there on premises pretty much for several months, kind of running it and getting it up to speed? Were you the one hands-on doing it all?
So I wasn't like there for like every day for a couple months. I was there, maybe once or twice a week, getting things squared away. But I run my facilities remotely, so I pretty much just uh, you know focused on systems and operations and getting those up to speed as soon as I could. And actually, I did have a full time manager. I acquired a full time manager um, when I bought the business, and she was there for about 5 months, and she didn't like the changes that I was, implementing. So she decided to quit about 5 or 6 months. So she was there to cushion everything, but she was definitely not. She didn't agree with my operations or the way I did things. Um,
Right.
so
So
yeah.
when you took stuff from the old model and you implemented the automations and stuff, where did you get the capital for that? Were you using the capital from the business, doing it little by little, or how did you come up with that capital?
Yeah, well, so initially the first things I did was, signage, security lighting, cameras, really focusing on, website. I got an updated website, and then all the vendors that you have to have in place. So probably 30,000 or so initially, and a lot of that came, yeah, from some of the cash flow that the property provided, but also some of my own from like business credit cards that I initially funded that way. And yeah, so I mean, like, like there's never a, uh, I don't think there's ever a $0 out of pocket deal, because you have to find, get the cap, whether it's your own capital to fix the place up or whatever, or you're spending money for marketing or to get it leased up. There's some capital in some form, or closing costs. I paid the closing costs and the title policy, so um, there was some capital. I mean, I paid probably 4 grand initially for closing, but it beats paying 150. So
I know I've been through the same thing. I did a 13 unit, same thing, zero down. And yeah, we had to pay closing costs. Yeah, we closed like August 30th, and then 2 days later, we collected September's rent check. So we pretty much got paid to take that property. But you're right, we had to come out of pocket for a little bit to pay for the
mhm.
closing costs,
Yeah.
and then putting capital back into it. So on your next deal, like, well, first of all, was there anything that you learned from that experience that you would have done differently in your first deal?
It's just, I would say, uh, for whatever reason, not that I didn't have faith it was going to close. It was a seller finance deal, but at the time, it was probably the biggest deal I'd done to date. So I was just nervous, like something would throw this off, and I would have spent the money to get the website and all that stuff up and running prior to closing. So I mean, I had spoken to these vendors, getting everything lined up, but I didn't pull the trigger until it was closed. So I was probably backed up about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, getting my website and everything integrated and stuff like that. So um, I think if I had to start over in that moment, I would have gone back and done it where everything was ready to go um, by the day of closing. And well, if I lose, you lose money. But I mean, no different than earnest money. And at the time, I think I only put down like, I don't know, it was a very low earnest money, so it wasn't like I was losing anything, or but yeah, I would do that. And then yeah, I mean, that's probably about it. I am actually in the process of expanding that facility right now. I bought 6 acres directly behind me not too long ago. Same thing with that one, where um, I was doing some, well, here recently, deals just don't pencil out very well. And so I used Landglide and was looking at the property around. I asked the neighbor, because the neighbor actually was the initial builder of the storage facility. And I said, hey, there's some land directly behind these set of buildings. They belong to you. Would you ever be interested in selling? He said, no. So I went ahead and looked up the owner that was directly behind my next set of buildings. And it turned out that that same day, he had listed it for sale. So I pretty much offered him what he wanted, and I got it on contract and closed on it with a construction loan to build out. So um,
I see.
yeah, so I mean, yeah.
How many more units you gonna add in there?
So I'm just doing it in phases.
Okay.
So I'll do about 11,000 square foot phases. I also added a boat and RV parking area, so about another 10,000 square feet of boat and RV, and then I still have 5 additional acres to do something with. But it's just a fine balance of making sure you're not oversaturating the market by bringing new storage online, because self storage is very sensitive to new supply. And as I said, going into a year where demand is kind of muted across the board. I've heard it from multiple self storage owner operators. Um, Someone posted today in one of the groups that they're seeing kind of a plateau, and and they're asking if anyone else has seen it, and there's like 30 comments of people saying the same thing. So it's definitely happening. So you know, in phases is probably the best route to go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for the past few years, they've been popping up everywhere. Everybody you talk to, there's a new one going up just in everybody's neighborhood. So it has
Yeah,
to plateau at some point. It's just the
yeah.
growth of it.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I always say, self storage is its own worst enemy. So you really have to be careful what markets you enter and where you decide. Because here's the thing: there are resources to check into existing supply, but sometimes those resources miss uh, existing or new supply that's in the pipeline. So you have to verify with the town or with the city if there's any new supply. Because if you have, let's just say you're in a market, everything looks pretty decent, and then you know, unbeknownst to you, there's 100,000 square feet being planned in the planning stages right now and approved or whatnot, and that's going to crush. That could crush everyone's occupancy. So you're banking on 95% occupancy or whatever, and that 100,000 square feet goes up, and now you're at 75, 80. Who knows? So yeah, it's definitely something to be sensitive to.
So, speaking of that, what do you and we all been talking about the multifamily, what we see coming soon. What is your thoughts on this whole market and the outlook of the commercial market here in the next, 6 months to 2 or 3 years? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, there's this phrase going around, survive to 25. Um, I think it's just that's pretty much it. Well, as you know now, like where the treasury 10-year treasuries are currently at, it's debt is just become it's just an obstacle for when you're underwriting multifamily or self storage, whatever the case. And so deals are becoming harder to pencil. And then you got the the all the loans coming due here in 24, 25 now. That a lot of that may be office, but same, there's loans coming due for multifamily. So um, and then you got the guys that didn't get rate caps, and it's just going to be interesting to see. I mean, we've been, as far as the multifamily firm goes, we've just been focused on um, operations, asset management, really fine tuning that, making sure systems and operations are in place, and we're being conservative with the underwriting still. Um, we've walked way more deals, and they a lot less deals have actually penciled out. So it's just part of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, you're seeing, I don't know about you, but I'm seeing a ton of multifamily ending up in my inbox, my mail. And it's what's happening is it's like it's coming from wholesalers. I look at a deal and a month ago and it comes in from another wholesaler. So some of
Yeah,
these sellers are still just being unrealistic on some of these prices out there.
yeah,
And
and we do focus on a lot on broker relationships, because I do see the wholesalers that tack on their 3 to 5% fee, and it's just a listing from the broker. So it's like, why would I go through you? I can just go to the broker who listed it. I mean, so I think for us, we place a big importance on building the broker relationships and performing. That's what the brokers like to see. Can the group perform? And then once they do, they continue to bring deals, and that's where our pipeline has been. A lot of brokers that just been shooting us deals and stuff like that, and kind of go from there.
so are you guys at your firm talking about just holding some cash? So if you do see the market pull back in multifamily, so jumping in there at the opportunities, are you guys viewing it that, or are you just kind of going day by day?
Yeah, so because we do it like a deal by deal basis as far as equity goes, um, we're just looking for, we're looking at a deal with an extremely low interest rate. It's an assumption, and currently, and it's looking, so far it's penciling out. So we're going through the process, and but that's been one of few that have actually worked out to our criteria. Um, so I mean, we're just like going deal by deal, and really just trying to justify the equity stack as far as, um, does this amount of because leverage has been really low on agency, and then so 60% LTV, just it doesn't make that much sense as far as the equity stack is concerned. So we're trying to be as resourceful as possible and utilize the equity uh, in the best place we can. So
Once you kind of educate some people listening what equity stack means when you're talking about when you're looking at those deals? Some of these people listening right now may not know.
Yeah, I mean, so we're underwriting multifamily deal, and let's just say, you know, one of the agencies is offering 50% loan to value, where you're going to have to raise the remaining 50%, and then you got to account for that your capex. Depending on whether you use agency debt or uh, one of the other small balance loans or what have you. You're either financing your capex or you're not. So that's going to be added to the equity that you have to raise. So, we have a certain equity criteria we like to search for. Typically, um, 4 to 5 million is kind of our our buffer as far as what we like to raise. Um, Anything less than that, it's even better. So we got to make sure we use put that 4 to 5 to best use. And if it's putting that towards 50% of that towards a class C deal, it's just like, man, I don't know. It's just probably not the best use for it. So we're just being cautious. We're still underwriting. We're still sending LOIs. We're still walking properties, and at the same time, focusing on our operations, making sure our asset management, tenant retention is going to be very big. There's a gentleman by the name of Jay Parsons. He posts on Twitter and LinkedIn. He has fantastic data. I think he's the SVP for RealPage. So he has a lot of good data on multifamily, and one of the things he harped on is just retention. Tenant retention is going to be big, in this year and the next, and the cost of turns for units they've increased in price. So just back to asset management really, and tenant retention.
Nice, nice. And what are you guys doing to kind of work on? Are you doing different things? Like, what are some of the retention that you guys are doing to kind of keep your tenants?
So we've been talking about getting some surveys from some of the tenants and trying to see what they want or what they're wanting, and kind of take that into in consideration. Um, you know, I think also too, what's helped at some of our properties is the manager that's there. They have a good relationship with the tenants, and that obviously helps a lot. Um, but initially we haven't been under. All of our properties are in good shape, um, and we didn't uh, underwrite to like 20% rent growth or something astronomical. Like, I know even though people were in DFW were achieving 15-20% rent growth, but that's just not sustainable. So we weren't underwriting. We are just sticking to our underwriting, and we got turned down on deals, but the ones we did win, they've been outperforming our expectations.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned before, I don't know if it was before we went live, that you also do industrial parks or flex spaces. You got a couple of those, or you mentioned?
Yeah, yeah. So that was actually part of that portfolio that I bought. So that was a 11 property portfolio that I purchased out in the Panhandle, out by Amarillo, and I it was basically like the whole block. Like, so it was all on one parcel, but it's the whole block. So like there's self storage, there was these flex warehouse spaces, and then a few of those are rented out by national tenants. So I have some modified gross leases on those, and then yeah, they're pretty easy, pretty hands off. They pay on time. I get don't have to worry about that. As far as self storage goes, you do have to chase the past due tenants, and sometimes that can be a hassle. But on the properties that I have in East Texas, uh, I was getting almost at a certain point, I was getting almost like $1,000 in late fees, um, which is, and these people these late fees are coming from the same people every single month. It baffles me, but you know, at the end of the day, the thing you have to, it's just you're seeing that percentage past due, and you're like, that number bothers me, but I guess you gotta, in a way,
Now, how did you? Because when I see portfolio packages come in, it's a lot of work. How did you go about that evaluating? Were there, I'm assuming they're different parcels. Were they all the same LLC? Were they different LLCs? So how did you go through that whole valuation?
they were all owned by one owner, and it was actually interesting because that specific deal, I had a single family rental that I 1031 exchanged into this deal, this portfolio deal, and the other 10% I had the seller carry, and then 80% of that um, financing came. The rest of it came from the bank. So I was in it for 10%, but as soon as I purchased it, the next day, my equity shot up by like $700,000 um, as is. So my basis on that was like $20 a square foot. Um, so
It's amazing.
and it,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. And initially, it was I mostly underwrote it for the storage, and everything else I saw was kind of free. So I didn't really take a whole lot of time digging into and initially like uh, what I could do with the other properties. I was just really focused because that one was at 30% occupancy when I bought it, or in the 30s. So I was doing everything. I was doing all the sweat equity. So I had to focus in on getting that up because I'm a storage operator initially. And then along the way, learning about the industrial piece and it has a little strip center of offices as well. They're like single offices. There's a couple rented out. Haven't focused heavily on. I just recently rehabbed some of them, so I'll just market them out as single office spaces for rent. But there's that basically was free in a sense. So my main strategy was focusing on the storage, and everything made sense as far as a valuation standpoint on the self storage and my basis. So that's the initial going in strategy on that.
That's awesome. So you just kind of, so you, in that town, was it a small little town that you found this portfolio deal? How big was it? What was the population of that area?
I think it's about 20,000 people. So it was about 40 minutes from Amarillo, and they had just started. I think last year they put up a Starbucks and they put up a Scooters Coffee, and they built an Ace Hardware a couple of years ago. So there's a pattern of growth there, and typically I won't look at towns smaller than 20,000 people. It's just a personal preference. Not that it won't work anywhere else, but that's just a personal. I like to see the Starbucks there. I like to see the Walmart. I like to see a bunch of different industries that are there. That because it's very easy for, especially like the military towns. There's been several military. I was prior service military, so I've seen military towns just up and move. They um, for whatever reason they left the town. So that a lot of that occupancy came from the military or that base,
Okay.
and that was heavily based on that industry there. So if there's only one industry, I won't necessarily look at it.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. On the flex space, was that set up as a triple net? Or how was that set up?
No, more so like a modified gross lease. They pay their own electric. I fix any exterior stuff, and they're um, responsible for the interior. One of them was a big bread company. They have like they have a couple units there, and they have a bread route. Um, I think the first time, so one time they stabbed my doors. They're those big, huge roll up. These are 20 by 40 units, so about 800 square feet of space. The first time they stabbed my doors, they told me about it, and then got that fixed. The second time, it happened. Second time, not too long after, and they didn't tell me about it. They just fixed it, so uh, they didn't have to put me through that trouble. So, um, but you have to deal with
Nice.
stuff like that. stabbing a door with a forklift. Uh,
I can see that happening.
yeah,
So makes sense. So that's
yeah,
cool. So is there anything like is there a question I didn't ask you that you think would be good to for the viewers to listen to? And in a minute we'll get your information. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, or the type of assets that you're looking to acquire or anything like that.
yeah. I think just one of the things that really helped propelled me uh, personally is just focusing on resourcefulness, like how to be. I didn't come from like silver spoon background or anything like that. So just learning how to be resourceful with everything I did, um, trying to figure things out. Like this is what we do in creative financing. We get creative. We figure out how to make it happen. Um, and I think that's the key. And I'm sure it's been talked about before. Is just learn how to be resourceful and creative on these deals. And yeah, you'll definitely grow quick. And then I think also the catalyst for me was switching over from residential to commercial. Not to say you can't build a sizable um, single family portfolio, but the guys that I knew that did, they were older. It took them 15, 20 years to get 50, 100 houses. And I was trying to replace my income sooner than later. Uh, so that's why I decided to jump into the commercial real estate side.
No, I love it. I love it. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, how would they get a hold of you?
You can email me, Christian at C, like the letter C, stoneinvestments.com. I'm on Facebook, kind of. Just type my name, you'll find me. And yeah, probably those are the two best ways.
Awesome. Yeah, and if anybody wants, if you don't get the information, you can always reach out to me, and I can get you over to Christian as well. So, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and hopefully, I appreciate you kind of giving me some guidance on a storage facility there in Alabama. Actually, we're just
Oh
looking at the
yeah,
topography, and
yeah.
that one, the seller. The seller is open to some type of terms, but he's just being unrealistic. So it is what it is.
That's
It's part of the
good
game.
stuff.
So
Yeah, there'll be plenty more.
so yep, exactly. Well, I appreciate you coming on. We're gonna shut this out. You can hold it on until the end here. So thank you guys. If you have any questions, reach out to one of us, myself, Ronnie, Gabe, Marty, anybody if you have any questions. And if you have any questions on a topic or if you want to come on as a guest, feel free to reach out to us. And thank you so much. And please like and share. Thank you guys and have a great one.
Yeah.